My name is Elena Moore, and the fall of 1978 was when my world shattered into pieces. I was barely 22 when the news came. My husband, Daniel Hayes, had died in an accident on his way to work. They said his body was never found, only fragments of a torn shirt caught by the reeds along the roadside, stained with blood. I remember standing in the doorway that morning, clutching my shawl around my shoulders as the village messenger delivered the news, his face grave, his tone final. Daniel's gone, Elena. He won't be coming back. My knees buckled, and for a moment the world tilted sideways. I had to grip the doorframe just to keep from falling. My ears rang with the word gone. Gone? How could someone so young, so full of life, just disappear into nothingness? The villagers came with their sympathetic clucks of tongues and murmured condolences. Some shook their heads, whispering that Daniel was too young, too handsome, too full of potential for such a fate. Others cast sidelong glances at me, pity in their eyes. A newly widowed bride in her early 20s, what could be more tragic? I cried until my throat was raw, until my eyes were so swollen I could barely see. But tears don't feed a family, and after the mourning period ended, I was left standing in front of the Hayes household, facing the cold reality of my new life. Daniel's father had long since passed, leaving his mother Martha Hayes a frail widow with chronic pain in her legs. His younger siblings, Sophie and Ryan, were still in school. It was expected, no, demanded, that I take responsibility for them. After all, I was Daniel's wife. Who else would care for them if not me? So I did. I rose before dawn every day, trudging into the fields with a hoe slung over my shoulder. My own family had work to do, but I split my strength, laboring twice as hard to earn work points for the Hayes family as well. When Martha fell and broke her leg one winter, I spoon-fed her gruel by hand, cleaned her chamber pot, and taught her to walk again. When Sophie wanted new clothes to wear to school, I sold the scarf my mother had woven for me to buy fabric. When Ryan hungered for more meat, I gave up my share of rations so his plate could be filled. I gave them everything. My youth, my strength, my health. By the time I was 38, my reflection had become that of an old woman. My once dark hair had turned white at the roots, brittle as straw. My skin, once flushed with vitality, sagged like cracked jade. And then the doctor's words came like a final blow. A terminal illness. Your body is too worn down, he told me, shaking his head. You've worked it past its limits. There's nothing more we can do. I wasn't ready to die. Not yet. Not like this. Dragging my frail body, I went into the city, hope flickering in my chest like the last flame of a dying candle. Sophie and Ryan, hadn't I practically raised them myself? Hadn't I worked my fingers raw so they could attend university, so they could escape the village life? Surely they wouldn't abandon me now. But when I knocked on Ryan's door, he stared at me as though I were a beggar. Sister-in-law, he said, his face stiff, we're busy. I don't have time to deal with your problems. You should go back to the countryside. The city isn't for you. His wife, standing behind him, didn't even bother to hide her disdain. When I went to Sophie, she wouldn't even open the door. Her voice floated through the crack. Elena, you've done enough for us already. Don't drag us down with you. The door slammed shut. I stood there on the street, shaking, my breath shallow and painful. For decades I had carried them on my back, given them my labor, my food, my very life. And now, when I needed them most, they turned me away as though I were a stray dog scratching at their doorstep. It was then, stumbling along the bustling streets, my body wasting away, that I saw him. Daniel Hayes. Alive. He was stepping out of a shiny black car, his shoes polished, his suit pressed, his arm wrapped around a woman's waist. Her name came to me in an instant. Clara Lynn. Another sent-down youth like him, but from the city. Soft-spoken, cultured, elegant. The kind of woman who would never lower herself to dirty hands and calloused feet. My heart stopped. For a moment I thought I was seeing a ghost. But no, there he was, laughing, alive, his eyes bright with triumph. The man who had died decades ago. The husband I had mourned until I was hollow. The man whose family I had broken my back to serve. He had never died at all. It hit me like a thunderclap. Daniel had faked his death. He had staged the accident, abandoned me to servitude, while he slipped into a new life with the woman he truly loved. I was nothing but a tool to him. A beast of burden to feed his mother, raise his siblings, and give everything until I had nothing left. A scream rose in my throat, but it came out as a hollow laugh instead. My hands trembled as rage consumed me from the inside out. I turned back toward the village well. There I uncorked the vial of rat poison I had hidden for months. I tipped it back, the bitter liquid burning down my throat. As darkness swallowed me, the last thing I saw was the red glow of the Hayes house reduced to ashes. When I opened my eyes again, I was lying in the dirt. A heavy sack of flour rested across my shoulders, pressing me into the ground. I blinked at the familiar path, the endless fields, the sound of sparrows calling in the distance. My body was young again, strong again. My hands, once gnarled and calloused, were smooth. For a long moment I just lay there staring at the sky, laughter bubbling out of me like a madwoman. I had come back. Back to 20 years earlier. Back to before the sacrifices, before the betrayal, before the fire. The sack of flour was meant for the Hayes family. Slowly I rose to my feet, hefted it onto my shoulders and turned, not toward their house but toward my own. If they thought they could use me again, if they thought I would bow and serve them like before, they were sorely mistaken. This time the Hayes family wouldn't get a single grain of rice, a single drop of oil, or a single ounce of labor from me. This time I would be the one to decide their fate. When my eyes opened again after the fire and poison, I expected to see nothing, just the black void of death. But instead I saw sky. Wide, endless sky, stretched pale blue above me. For a moment I thought I was dreaming. My body felt light, the weight pressing down on me familiar yet strange. Then I realized what it was. A heavy sack of flour sprawled across my back, pinning me against the dirt path. My arms stung with scratches and my cheek was pressed against the cold earth. I pushed myself up slowly, my heart pounding. The field stretched out before me, the same field from decades ago. The dirt path, the thin reeds swaying by the creek, the smell of winter in the air. Everything was exactly as it had been 20 years earlier. I touched my hair, expecting brittle white strands. Instead, thick, dark locks slipped between my fingers. My hands were smooth, no longer the withered, cracked hands of an exhausted woman. My body felt strong again. I laughed. I cried. I laughed again. The sound that came out of me was half hysteria, half disbelief. I had returned. I was 22 again, standing at the fork in the road, carrying flour to the Hayes family. The same family who, in my last life, sucked the marrow out of my bones until I collapsed. The same Daniel Hayes who faked his death to abandon me for Clara Lynn. The same Martha, Sophie and Ryan who used me like a workhorse until I had nothing left. In my past life I had trudged straight ahead, carrying this flour into their greedy mouths. This time I turned around. When I stepped into our yard with the flour sack still full, my parents froze. My father, Thomas Moore, was in the yard repairing a broken hoe handle. His hands, calloused and steady, paused mid-motion. My mother, Grace Moore, came from the kitchen with steam from a pot curling around her, her ladle dripping porridge. "Elena." Father frowned. "Why are you back? Didn't you say Martha's family had nothing left to eat?" I set the flour down on our table with a dull thud. My voice came out steady. "They can starve. From today I'll never give them another grain." My parents stared at me as if I'd sprouted horns. "You," Mother began, then stopped. She stepped closer, searching my face. "Child, are you serious? You've run to their aid for years. Why this sudden change?" I clenched my fists. "Because I was blind before. Because I thought Daniel was worth it. But he isn't. He never was." Father's expression hardened, but a flash of relief shone in his eyes. "Do you mean it this time? Not just words?" "I swear," I said, voice sharp as a blade. "If I ever run to Daniel Hayes again, may I die a terrible death." My parents exchanged a glance. For a heartbeat, joy flickered across their faces. Mother grabbed my hand, tears filling her eyes. Finally you've come to your senses." Father exhaled slowly. "Then we'll make it official." We marched straight to the brigade office, where the village accountant, Uncle Zhao, was hunched over his desk scribbling in the ledger. The air smelled of dried ink and smoke from the small stove in the corner. He looked up when he saw us. "Ah, Elena," he said knowingly. "You're here about your work points?" I was just about to credit them to the Hayes family again. 4 mouths, 10 days of labor, without your points they'll starve. "That's not my problem," I said, my tone cold enough to freeze the air. "My points belong to me. From this day forward, none of them go to the Hayes family." Uncle Zhao blinked, stunned. "What? Elena, are you sure? You've been giving them everything. What changed? I leaned closer, letting him see the fire in my eyes. I was a fool before. Not anymore. Write it down and stamp it with the seal. Father added, his voice like thunder. I'll witness it. She's not going back on her word. The accountant hesitated for only a moment before scribbling on a fresh sheet of paper. The sound of his brush scratching against paper was like music to my ears. He finished, sprinkled sand over the ink, then pressed the bright red official seal onto the page. Done, he said, sliding it across the desk. From now on, no one can touch your points without your say. I took the paper in my hands and smiled. Thank you. Walking out of that office, I felt lighter than I had in decades. For the first time, I had cut the chain that bound me to the Hayes family. That evening, as my mother prepared dinner, a knock rattled our gate. I knew that voice before I even heard it clearly. Elena, came the high, whiny tone of Martha Hayes. Are you there? We're out of rice. Didn't you promise to bring flour? I leaned lazily against the doorway, folding my arms. My father came beside me, crossing his arms too. Martha, I said coolly. I gave my flour to my parents. We're eating it tonight. Your family will have to earn your own. Her face twisted, shifting from false sweetness to sour anger. Elena, how can you say that? You and Daniel. Daniel is gone. I cut her off, my tone flat. And so is my patience. Before she could reply, my mother stormed out, pointing a finger straight at her. Shameless. My daughter doesn't owe you anything. If I ever hear you knocking on this gate again, I'll chase you down the street with a broom. Martha flinched, her cheeks coloring. Behind her, I caught sight of Sophie's narrow face peeking around, eyes wide with disbelief. I smirked. Good night, Martha. Then I shut the gate in her face. The thud of wood meeting wood was the sweetest sound I'd ever heard. That night, when the village was quiet, I walked along the path by the reeds. The moon hung thin and cold above, the frost crunching under my shoes. I paused when I heard voices. 2 figures stood in the shadows, half hidden by the tall grass. My heart stopped for a beat when I recognized the voices. Clara, Daniel's voice whispered. I thought only you followed me here. I didn't expect the whole family to come back. Why are we stuck in this poor, miserable era again? We were finally living a good life last time. Clara Lynn's soft, city-bred tone followed. It's unfair. We should have gone back to the good days, not this suffering. Still, her voice hardened. At least we know what's coming. We can use Elena again. Make her carry the burden while we focus on our studies. Just like last time. My blood ran cold then boiled. They were reborn too. They remembered everything, and their very first thought was to exploit me again. I pressed my fist to my mouth to keep from laughing out loud. The irony was almost too much. You think you can use me again? Well, this time I'll be the one to use you. I stooped, picked up a stone and clenched it tight in my hand. My nails dug into my palm, and my lips curled into a smile sharp enough to cut glass. Daniel Hayes. Clara Lynn. If it's war you want, then war you'll have. And under the cold silver light of the moon I swore silently. This time I won't be your victim. I'll be your nightmare. The next day the whole village stirred with whispers. Ever since I overheard Daniel and Clara in the reeds, plotting to use me again, I'd been thinking of ways to turn their schemes against them. If they wanted to repeat the past, I would make sure their new beginning turned to ashes before it even started. I had an advantage now, foresight. They thought they could hide their little romance just like last time. They thought they could rely on my blindness. But I wasn't blind anymore. This time I would be the one holding the knife. The reeds by the creek were thick and tall, the perfect hiding place for secret meetings. Everyone in the village knew that youth sometimes snuck there, but no one dared get caught. It was a stain on one's reputation. Especially in these times, being discovered sneaking around unmarried could destroy your chances of higher education, marriage prospects, and even work assignments. Daniel and Clara thought themselves clever, meeting in whispers when no one else was around. What they didn't realize was that I had lived this life once before. I knew their habits better than they knew themselves. That evening, I gathered a few stones and walked deliberately near the creek, humming to myself, making sure my shadow stretched long enough for them to see. Then, pretending not to notice, I disappeared into the distance. As I expected, Daniel couldn't resist. Not long after, I heard Clara's delicate voice drifting from the reeds. Daniel, are you sure no one will find us here? Don't worry, he murmured back, his tone dripping with confidence. This is the safest place. Besides, even if someone suspects, who would dare accuse us without proof? I crouched behind the willows, my lips curling into a smile. Proof? I would give the entire village proof. I waited until the moon rose higher, until their silhouettes leaned close together. Then I hurled a stone into the reeds with all my strength. Thud. Ouch. Daniel yelped. Another stone followed, striking Clara's shoulder. She gasped in pain. Before they could recover, I cupped my hands around my mouth and cried in a shrill, mocking voice, "Hey! Somebody! There's a shameless couple sneaking around in the reeds. Catch them before they disgrace the whole village." My voice cut through the quiet night like a bell. Within minutes, the village patrol arrived with lanterns, stomping through the reeds. "What's this?" the captain barked, pulling back the tall grass. His lantern beam landed squarely on Daniel and Clara, huddled together, their clothes disheveled. Gasps and mutters erupted from the villagers behind him. "So it's true," someone hissed. "Hayes boy and that Lynn girl. Engaged to Elena, yet sneaking off here with another woman? Shameless." Daniel's face went pale, his mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for air. Clara burst into tears instantly, covering her face with her hands. "It's not what it looks like," Daniel shouted, but no one believed him. The patrol captain crossed his arms. "We've had rumors about you two before. Now we've caught you red-handed. The brigade will decide your punishment." And just like that, both Daniel and Clara were dragged off, their protests drowned beneath the jeers of the crowd. The next morning, word spread like wildfire. By order of the village committee, Daniel Hayes and Clara Lynn were each assigned double the labor quota for the next 3 months. That meant endless back-breaking work in the fields, hauling loads and no rest. For students like them, who were trying to prepare for the reinstated college entrance exams, it was a nightmare. Labor meant exhaustion, less time for studying, and little chance of scoring high enough to escape the countryside. As I listened to the gossip echoing through the lanes, I hid my smile behind my sleeve. They had planned to make me shoulder their burdens again, but now their own backs would break under the weight. This was only the beginning. It didn't take long for Martha Hayes to show up again at our door. Her face was more haggard than usual, her eyes frantic. Sophie and Ryan trailed behind her, their expressions sour as if forced to accompany her. "Elena," Martha cooed, her voice syrupy sweet. "My poor Daniel has been punished so unfairly. And Clara too? Oh, such a misunderstanding. You know Daniel would never betray you, right?" She's just confused. "You're the one he truly cares about." I leaned against the doorway, arms crossed. My mother came to stand beside me, ladle in hand like a weapon. "Martha," I said coldly, "don't you ever feel ashamed, spinning lies like silk? Your son got caught sneaking with Clara in front of the entire village, and you dare to tell me he's innocent." Martha's face twitched. "People misunderstand, Elena. You mustn't believe gossip. Please, we're out of rice, out of flour. Just a little until—" "No," I snapped. Her mouth opened, but before she could protest, my mother stepped forward, her voice sharp as a whip. "Get out, Martha Hayes. My daughter owes you nothing. If I see you begging here again, I'll chase you out with boiling water." Sophie's eyes widened, Ryan's face flushed with anger, but none of them dared speak back. Martha bit her lip, her expression a twisted mask of humiliation and fury, before turning away with her brood. I watched them leave, my heart soaring with satisfaction. This time they weren't getting a single grain from me. 2 days later, Daniel himself came. I was sitting in the yard, shelling beans with my mother, when his shadow darkened the gate. He looked thinner already, his once proud posture sagging under fatigue. His hands, once smooth from avoiding labor, were raw and red. "Elena," he said, his tone softer than I'd ever heard it. "Can we talk?" I didn't move. "What is there to talk about?" He stepped inside hesitantly, glancing at my mother as though expecting her to leave us. He didn't. She sat beside me, pounding garlic with her pestle, the rhythm steady, protective. "Elena," Daniel said again, lowering his voice, "you know how hard things are for us now. My mother is old, Sophie and Ryan are still children. Clara doesn't matter. You're the one I should have chosen. You're the only one who truly cares for me." I laughed, a sharp, cutting sound. "Care for you? You mean work for you? Slave for you? Feed you until I drop dead?" His face stiffened. "I didn't mean it like that. I just..." Stop, I cut him off. Do you think I don't know? You got caught sneaking with Clara. The whole village saw it. And now because you're starving, because you're drowning in work, you come crawling to me? Tell me, Daniel Hayes, if you were still living comfortably, would you be here begging? He flinched. Silence stretched between us, broken only by the pounding of garlic. Don't come back, I said finally, my voice like ice. You and your family mean nothing to me. This time I won't be fooled. His jaw clenched, his pride warring with desperation. At last he turned and left without another word. As I watched his back retreat down the lane, I smiled. Let's see how long you last without me. By the end of the week, the Hayes family was collapsing. Their labor quotas piled higher and higher. Martha was too weak to keep up. Sophie and Ryan, who had grown up pampered under my care in the last life, whined endlessly about the hunger and the exhaustion. Daniel and Clara, forced into endless work, no longer had the strength to pretend. They staggered home each night, barely able to stand. For the first time, the Hayes family truly realized, without me they couldn't survive. And I, sitting by the fire in my own warm home, a bowl of steaming porridge in my hands, thought, good. This is only the beginning. It didn't take long after Daniel's humiliation for the Hayes family to change their strategy. When pleading and begging didn't work, when hunger gnawed at their bellies and labor broke their backs, they did what they always did best: scheme. And the target of their scheme? Me. It was a Sunday morning when the knock came. The sound was different this time. Louder, deliberate, not the desperate pounding of Martha begging for food. When I opened the door, I nearly laughed. Standing there in a bright floral jacket was Auntie Wu, one of the village's self-appointed matchmakers. She was known for sticking her nose into everyone's marriages, puffing up her chest as if she were responsible for every couple in the county. Her smile today was wide and oily. "Elena," she chirped, her eyes twinkling. "What a fine young woman you've become. Lucky, lucky girl. The Hayes family has sent me." I arched an eyebrow. "The Hayes family?" "That's right," she said, stepping into the courtyard uninvited. "Daniel asked me to come personally. He knows he was wrong before and now he wants to make things right. He's asking for your hand in marriage." My mother, who had been hanging laundry nearby, dropped a wet shirt back into the basin with a splash. My father, sharpening a sickle in the corner, paused and gave a short, disbelieving laugh. I folded my arms, hiding the smirk tugging at my lips. So Daniel thought a formal proposal would pull me back into his web? He thought I'd melt at the word marriage, after years of being treated like a servant? Fine. If he wanted a performance, I'd give him one. "Auntie Wu," I said sweetly, "you can tell Daniel that I'm willing to consider his proposal." Her eyes lit up, greedy for the commission she'd earn. "Wonderful. I knew you'd agree. Such a good match, the two of you. But," I cut in, letting my voice harden, "I have conditions." She blinked. "Conditions?" "Yes," I said. "First, Daniel must make a public vow in front of the whole village. He will swear he has nothing to do with Clara Lynn, that he has always liked me, and if he lies, may lightning strike him dead." Auntie Wu shifted uncomfortably. "That's harsh, child." I leaned closer, lowering my voice. "If he truly likes me, he'll have no trouble swearing. If he refuses, that means he's lying." She coughed into her sleeve. "And the other conditions?" "Second," I said firmly, "there must be a proper bride price delivered openly to my family. No tricks, no words, no promises. Money, grain, oil. Something real. And third," I added, smiling coldly, "my parents have promised that whatever the Hayes family gives, they'll double it as my dowry. But only if Daniel proves his sincerity." Auntie Wu stared at me, her mouth opening and closing like a fish. Finally she nodded. "I'll tell them." When she scurried away, I turned to see my parents staring at me in shock. "Elena," Mother whispered. "You actually agreed?" I smiled. "Don't worry, Mother. This isn't about marriage. This is about making them bleed." When news spread of my conditions, the entire village buzzed with gossip. "The Hayes family wants Elena back? She's demanding a bride price. And her parents will double it? That's a fortune." For a family already drowning in debt, it was a nightmare. But greed and desperation are powerful motivators. Martha, Sophie, and Ryan went door to door, shamelessly borrowing from anyone who would listen. "Please," Martha wheedled, "it's for Daniel's marriage." Once he gets into university, he'll repay you double. Marriage? With Elena? Some scoffed. After sneaking around with Clara? But others, out of respect for my father's position as team leader, reluctantly handed over grain coupons, coins, or oil. Piece by piece, the Hayes scraped together a bride price that was just decent enough to present. I watched them with amusement. The same family who once treated me like a servant now emptied their pockets for the chance to tie me down again. The day of the proposal, the Hayes arrived at our gate with fanfare. Martha carried a basket of grain, Sophie clutched a bundle of cloth, Ryan held a jar of oil, and Daniel walked at the front, his face pale but proud as if trying to salvage his dignity. Behind them trailed half the village, eager for a show. Auntie Wu cleared her throat and announced loudly, "Today, the Hayes family has come to propose marriage for Daniel and Elena Moore." Gasps rippled through the crowd. My father stepped forward, his expression solemn. "If Daniel wants my daughter, he must first swear in front of everyone." The villagers murmured in agreement. Everyone knew about the Reeds incident. Daniel's face stiffened. He glanced at Clara standing in the crowd, her face pale with fury. Then, gritting his teeth, he raised his hand. "I swear," he said loudly, "I have nothing to do with Clara Lynn. I have always liked Elena. If I am lying, may lightning strike me dead." The crowd erupted in chatter. Some believed him, others scoffed. Clara turned away, biting her lip until it bled. My father nodded. "Good. Now for the bride price." Martha and her children scrambled to display their offerings. Grain, oilcloth, a few coins. It wasn't much, but it was everything they had managed to scrape together. My mother stepped forward, her eyes gleaming. "The Moore family accepts this bride price. And as promised, we will double it for Elena's dowry." The villagers gasped again. It was a public humiliation for the Hayes. Everyone now knew their debts, and everyone saw that without the Moores they had nothing. After the proposal, the Hayes family was smug. They thought I was trapped now, bound to them by custom and duty. Martha even came whispering a few days later, "Elena, now that you're practically family, why don't you come help us with the work? After all, soon you'll be one of us again." I smiled sweetly and shook my head. "I can't. My leg hurts." The look on her face was priceless. Shock, disbelief, then barely contained rage. Day after day they came expecting me to return to my old habits. Cooking, cleaning, hauling, working. Day after day I feigned weakness, lounging at home, eating well, laughing with my parents. Meanwhile, the Hayes family's debts loomed larger. The food they borrowed was already being demanded back. Their labor quotas kept increasing. Daniel and Clara had no time to study, no energy to pretend. And still I gave them nothing. By the end of the month, the Hayes household was collapsing under the weight of debt. Their once smug faces grew gaunt, their voices hoarse from begging. The villagers who had once pitied them now laughed behind their backs. Thought they'd trap Elena again? Looks like she's the one trapping them. At night I would lie in bed and smile to myself. In my past life I had been their servant the moment they proposed marriage. This time the proposal was their chain, not mine. And as their suffering deepened, I whispered into the dark. "Daniel Hayes, this is only the beginning. You wanted to bind me to your family again? Fine. Let's see if you can survive the chains you forged with your own hands." The thing about liars is, sooner or later their lies catch up to them. Daniel thought one vow, one jar of oil, one bundle of grain would chain me back to his family. But chains forged from lies are brittle things. They snap at the slightest pressure. I only had to apply that pressure at the right moment. The opportunity came sooner than expected. One Saturday evening the loudspeaker crackled to life. "All villagers report to the square tomorrow morning for assembly. Attendance mandatory." Assemblies meant announcements. New work quotas, new grain distributions, new punishments for families who fell behind. It was also when gossip ripened into public truth. If you wanted to ruin someone, you didn't whisper in dark corners. You planted the seed in the assembly and let the crowd water it for you. The morning sun blazed hot when we gathered. Men leaned on hoes, women carried stools, children tugged at sleeves. The square hummed with chatter. I stood with my parents near the front, my head high, my heart steady. Across the square I spotted the Hayes family. They looked like wilted crops after a drought. Martha's eyes sunken, Sophie thin as a reed, Ryan's clothes patched until they were more whole than fabric. And Daniel. Daniel stood stiff, pretending strength, his gaze darting restlessly as though searching for Clara. I smirked. He needn't search long. Because right on cue Clara Lynn arrived. She didn't belong here. Everything about her screamed city. The neat braids, the carefully mended dress that still looked finer than ours, the soft skin that had never touched a hoe. She walked into the square with a basket of books on her arm, chin lifted high as though she were above us all. The villagers noticed immediately. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Why is Clara here? She doesn't usually come to assemblies. Isn't she the one people said Daniel liked? Perfect. I watched her make her way to Daniel, her steps quickening, her eyes anxious, as though she needed him to shield her. He flinched when she reached for his sleeve, but it was too late. Half the square had already seen it. When the assembly began, the team leader rattled off numbers about grain quotas, but no one was really listening. All eyes kept flicking toward Daniel and Clara. That was when I raised my voice, loud enough for those around me to hear, innocent as could be. Strange, isn't it? Just last month Daniel swore in front of everyone he had nothing to do with Clara. Said if he was lying may lightning strike him dead. Yet here she is, standing with him as if. I let my words trail off, biting my lip, lowering my eyes. Not accusing, not outright, just planting doubt. The effect was immediate. Villagers twisted to look, whispers turning into murmurs. Didn't he swear an oath? Then why is Clara acting like his wife? Maybe Elena was tricked into marrying him after all. The hum grew louder, circling the square like a rising storm. Clara's face flushed red, then pale, then red again. She had never been good at being silent when humiliated. Finally she burst out. Why should I hide it? Yes, Daniel and I are together. We've been together all along. He only proposed to Elena because his family forced him, because she tricked him with her dowry. The square erupted. Gasps, exclamations, laughter. Someone shouted, so his oath was a lie after all. Another spat on the ground. Shameless. Daniel's face drained of all color. Clara, shut up, he hissed, grabbing her arm. But Clara, trembling with fury, tore free. Why should I? You said you'd never deny me again. You said once Elena agreed you'd. Her voice cracked, but the damage was done. The crowd pressed in. So, Daniel lied before the whole village? He dared swear to the heavens falsely? And after Elena agreed to marry him honestly? The whispers turned into jeers. Men spat insults. Women shook their heads. Even children pointed. Daniel stood in the middle, caught between Clara's weeping accusations and the villagers' condemnation. His lips moved soundlessly, searching for an excuse, but there was none. If he denied Clara now, he was a liar who had perjured himself. If he admitted it, he was a shameless cheat. Either way, he was finished. I lowered my lashes, feigning distress. Oh, Daniel, you swore before everyone. How could you? The villagers' outrage turned sharper, now fueled by pity for me. Elena deserves better. She worked hard, yet he plays with her feelings. The Hayes family has no face left to show. Martha wailed. No, it's not true. Claire's lying. Elena, don't listen. Daniel only wants you. But no one listened. Her cries were drowned by the tide of villagers. Sophie tried to step forward to shield her brother, but someone shoved her back. Ryan clenched his fists, glaring at me as though it were my fault, but he dared not speak. And Clara? Clara sobbed openly now, clinging to Daniel's sleeve, demanding he defend her. Daniel shoved her away. Enough. You've ruined me. The words rang across the square, final and cutting. Clara's knees buckled, her sobs echoing in the silence that followed. The villagers sneered. Ruined himself, more like. A man who denies his lover in front of everyone isn't worth spit. Martha collapsed onto the ground, beating her chest. The Hayes family's reputation, already frayed, was now torn to shreds. Through it all, I remained the picture of innocence. I didn't raise my voice, didn't point a finger. I simply let Clara expose the truth, let Daniel hang himself with the rope of his own lies. When the assembly ended, the villagers parted around me with respect. Some patted my shoulder, others muttered words of comfort. Don't cry, Elena. You're too good for him. I only smiled faintly, though inside triumph burned sweet as honey. The Hayes family slunk home that day like beaten dogs, their heads down, their voices silent. Daniel's shoulders hunched, Clara trailing behind him in tears. Martha limping pitifully, Sophie's eyes red, Ryan's jaw clenched. Me. I walked home between my parents, the sun warm on my face, the weight of years of humiliation lifting off my shoulders. That night, alone in my room, I lit a candle and watched its flame dance. My reflection in the glow was calm, collected, victorious. In my last life, I whispered, they stripped me of dignity in public, left me with nothing. This time I return the favor. Let the whole village see their shame. Let them choke on it. I closed my eyes, savoring the memory of Daniel's pale face, Clara's shrill voice, Martha's sobs. It wasn't enough, not yet. But it was a start. The Hayes family had lost their reputation. Soon they would lose much more. The Hayes family was like a cornered rat, filthy, desperate, and dangerous. After the assembly, their reputation lay in tatters. People spat when they passed, muttered liar under their breath. Creditors came knocking, demanding repayment. Even those few who once pitied Martha now laughed at her wailing. I thought shame would keep them quiet. But shame doesn't tame a rat. It makes it bite harder. Martha's last gambit. It was Sophie who slipped up first. I overheard her one afternoon when I was on my way back from the fields. She was standing by the well, whispering to Ryan. Mother says if we don't secure Elena soon, we'll starve. Daniel can't get into university without her dowry. We have no food, no money. We have to force her. My stomach tightened, though not with fear. Force me? They thought they could ruin me by destroying my reputation, dragging me into the reeds and claiming I had given myself to Daniel? In my past life they might have succeeded. I had been naive, meek, eager to avoid shame. But not this time. This time I would let them set the trap. And then I would spring it. The next evening I deliberately lingered after dinner, strolling near the river. The reeds swayed tall and thick, whispering in the wind. Shadows lengthened across the fields. It was the perfect place for secrets. The same reeds where Daniel and Clara had once been caught. And sure enough, I heard it. The faint rustle of feet, the held breaths of those hiding. I pretended not to notice. I hummed softly to myself, walking closer to the reeds, my skirt brushing against the tall stalks. Then suddenly, arms shot out. Rough hands grabbed at my wrists. Daniel's face appeared from the shadows, wild-eyed, desperate. Behind him, Ryan and Sophie blocked the path, Martha's shrill whisper urging them on. Elena, Daniel hissed, don't resist. Once we're together, no one will dare refuse our marriage. I let out a sharp cry, struggling just enough to make it look real. Daniel, let me go. Stop pretending. Sophie spat. You've always liked him. Once everyone knows, you'll have no choice but to marry. Ryan grinned, his teeth yellow in the dim light. Better for you too, Elena. At least you'll have a husband. My heart thudded, not with fear but with anticipation. They had revealed their entire plan. Ruin my reputation, force my parents' hand, trap me into their pit again. I let them think they had won. I staggered back into the reeds, letting Daniel push me down onto the soft earth. His face loomed closer, the stench of desperation heavy in his breath. That was when I struck. I drove my knee upward with all the strength I had saved from years of labor. It connected squarely, brutally with Daniel's most vulnerable spot. He let out a strangled scream, collapsing onto the ground, clutching himself. His face twisted in agony, veins standing out on his neck. You witch, he gasped. I leapt to my feet, my eyes blazing. You dared try to ruin me? Daniel Hayes, you've ruined yourself. Ryan lunged at me, but I swung the heavy wooden hairpin from my bun, striking him across the temple. He stumbled, dazed, blood trickling down. Sophie shrieked, rushing forward, but I turned on her with a glare so cold she froze in place. Do you want me to finish what I started with your brother? She whimpered and backed away. Daniel writhed on the ground, moaning pitifully. Martha rushed out from the reeds, her face pale. Elena, please. Don't tell anyone, she begged, clutching my sleeve. If people find out, if they know Daniel's. I shoved her off, my voice cutting like a blade. If people find out, it's because you forced me here. Do you think I'm afraid of the truth? The village already knows what kind of family you are. One more scandal won't change a thing. Martha fell to her knees, trembling. No, please, please. If Daniel can't, if he's crippled as a man, our family is finished. I looked down at her, at Daniel writhing in the dirt, at Sophie's tear-streaked face and Ryan's bleeding temple. For the first time they weren't lording over me. They weren't plotting behind my back. They were groveling. And it was glorious. I straightened my dress, my voice calm. I'll keep quiet for now. But if any of you ever lay a hand on me again, if you so much as look at me wrong, I'll tell the whole village what happened tonight. Do you understand? They nodded frantically. Good, I said, turning on my heel. Enjoy your future. Because Daniel Hayes has none. I walked away, leaving them in the reeds, their whispers frantic, their sobs muffled. Behind me, Daniel whimpered like a broken animal. The next day, the Hayes family didn't appear in the fields. Whispers spread quickly. Why is Daniel limping? Why does Ryan have a bandage on his head? Why are they all so pale? I passed by, serene and unbothered, smiling faintly when villagers asked me if I'd seen anything unusual. Nothing at all, I said sweetly. Why do you ask? But inside I knew the truth. Daniel's future as a man was gone. His dreams of university, of status, of heirs, all shattered in one night. And the best part? No one else knew. To the villagers he was simply weak, unlucky, sickly. To his own family he was a shameful secret they would guard until their last breath. That night, lying in bed, I replayed the scene in my mind. Daniel writhing, Martha begging, Sophie crying, Ryan bleeding. In my past life I had been the one broken in the reeds. They had forced me, trapped me, stolen my dignity. But in this life I turned their trap into their destruction. I whispered into the darkness. This is only the beginning. Daniel Hayes, you will regret ever touching me. One day you'll wish you had never been born. And for the first time in 2 lifetimes I slept peacefully. By the time summer rolled in, the Hayes family looked nothing like the proud, conniving brood that had once lorded over me. Their home, once noisy with Martha's scolding, Sophie's whining, Ryan's lazy laughter, and Daniel's smug voice, now echoed with silence and misery. Daniel limped through the fields, dragging one leg, his face pale and hollow. Word had spread that he'd injured himself in the reeds, though no one knew how. The truth, that I had destroyed his manhood, was a secret they dared not breathe. Martha had fallen while hauling water weeks earlier, breaking her leg so badly the bone jutted through. Infection set in. The village medic did what he could, but in the end her leg had to be amputated. She spent her days propped on a stool, cursing fate, cursing me, cursing her useless children. Ryan's head wound from that night had healed poorly, leaving him with dizzy spells and blurred vision. Sophie, deprived of her chance to attend school, was stuck in the fields, her hands blistered and swollen. Her once proud posture had bent under the sun, bitterness etched into every line of her young face. They had once wanted to chain me to their misery. Instead they had chained themselves. One evening I went to their house. Not out of pity, out of purpose. The stench hit me first. Unwashed bodies, rotting food, sickness. The room was dim, Martha glaring at me from her stool, Daniel slumped in the corner, Sophie and Ryan huddled together like beaten dogs. Why are you here? Martha spat, her voice sharp despite her weakness. Come to laugh at us? I smiled faintly. No. I came to tell you the truth. They stiffened. In my last life I served you all for 20 years. I gave my youth, my strength, my dignity. And how did you repay me? By pushing me into a river like trash. Their faces drained of color. Yes, I whispered, leaning forward. I died. And I came back. This time, every ounce of suffering you gave me, I've returned to you. And I will keep returning it until there's nothing left of the Hayes family but ashes. Ryan's lips trembled. You're lying. But his eyes betrayed him. He believed me. They all did. Sophie whimpered, covering her face. Martha muttered prayers under her breath. Daniel closed his eyes, shuddering. I turned to leave, my voice cold as steel. Remember, this is only the beginning. I didn't have to lift another finger. Fate, cruel and just, sent Clara Lynn to finish the job. Clara had once believed Daniel would marry her. She had defended him at the assembly, confessed their affair before the whole village. And how did Daniel reward her? By shoving her aside, calling her his ruin. Scorned, Clara's love curdled into hatred. She began lurking near the Hayes home, her eyes wild, her laughter brittle. One night, Sophie crossed her on the road. I wasn't there, but the whispers spread fast the next morning. Clara went mad. She scratched Sophie's face with her nails. Her beauty is gone, scarred forever. When I saw Sophie next, her cheeks bore deep red gouges, her eyes swollen from weeping. She hid behind a scarf, but the shame in her posture betrayed her. The girl who had once sneered at me as plain and beneath her was now disfigured by the very woman she had mocked. Ryan fared no better. He had always been sly, always looking for someone weaker to bully. He thought he could scare Clara off after she scarred Sophie. I heard about it from villagers. Ryan cornered Clara by the well, hissing threats, grabbing her arm. But Clara snapped. She smashed the bucket against his head, water and blood mingling as he fell. When he staggered up, she flung sand into his eyes, blinding him. His screams echoed across the village, chilling even those who had pitied him before. When I saw him days later, his eyes were clouded, his steps clumsy. A once cunning fox reduced to stumbling blindness. The villagers shook their heads. The Hayes family is cursed. Everything they once wished on Elena, heaven has given back to them. I only smiled. I would pass their house sometimes just to watch. Martha sat on her stool, one leg gone, her eyes burning with hatred that had nowhere to go. Daniel limped in circles, muttering to himself. Sophie hid her scarred face, sobbing endlessly. Ryan stumbled in darkness, groping along walls. Their home had become a tomb, filled not with death but with suffering worse than death. And I, reborn, free, unshackled, stood outside that tomb, breathing the fresh air they had once stolen from me. In my past life I had wasted 20 years serving them, thinking duty and sacrifice would earn me love. Instead they had given me betrayal and death. Now in this life I had given them back every drop of their cruelty. And fate, in its strange justice, had lent me a hand through Clara's madness. I almost pitied them. Almost. But then I remembered Martha's sneer, Sophie's scorn, Ryan's jeers, Daniel's betrayal. And the pity dissolved like smoke. One evening, as the sun bled red across the fields, I stood at a distance and watched the Hayes house. The roof sagged, the walls cracked, their lantern flickered weakly. I whispered to myself, "In my last life you buried me in misery. In this one I buried you in yours. The debt is paid." And with that I turned my back on them, walking toward the light of my own future. The Hayes family, once arrogant and proud, had collapsed into dust and despair. And I was finally free. The fields were golden with harvest when I finally felt it, the weight of the Hayes family lifting from my shoulders. For months, I had carried their shadow like a stone in my chest. Every glance from Daniel, every sneer from Sophie, every order from Martha had been chains binding me. But now, their house was silent, their voices broken, their power gone. I was free, meeting Adrian again. Freedom, however, is not the same as peace. One afternoon, as I balanced 2 buckets of water across my shoulders, I heard a familiar voice behind me. "Elena, let me carry that." I turned. Adrian Wu stood there, taller than I remembered, his hands calloused from city work but his eyes kind as they had been in our school days. He reached for the buckets before I could protest, his steady arms taking the weight. "You don't have to," I said softly. "I know," he replied. "But I want to." The simplicity of his words struck me. No demand, no bargain, no chain attached. Just an offer freely given. After so many years with the Hayes family, where every crumb came at the cost of humiliation, Adrian's quiet kindness felt almost foreign. Slow trust. Adrian began appearing more often. Sometimes he helped me with the heavy work. Sometimes he just walked beside me talking about the world beyond the village. He had been to the county town, seen the new factories, read books I had never touched. "You always loved learning," he told me one evening, handing me a tattered newspaper. "You should read again." My hands trembled as I unfolded the paper. Once, Martha had torn my school books to shreds, laughing as she told me I was fit only for the fields. Now here was Adrian giving me words again. I read slowly, my lips forming each syllable, and he listened patiently, correcting me when I faltered. Trust, fragile and hesitant, began to take root between us. From trust to warmth. The first time I laughed with him, really laughed, it startled me. We were in the fields, and he told a story about tripping in front of the county magistrate while carrying a sack of grain. His dramatic reenactment, arms flailing, eyes wide, sent me into such laughter I nearly dropped my basket. He froze for a moment, staring at me. "I haven't heard you laugh like that in years," he said softly. I hadn't either. My laughter had been buried under scorn, under grief, under betrayal. But with him it returned, shy at first, then freer each day. And with laughter came warmth, the slow, careful warmth of something more than friendship. The Hayes family no longer mattered. Daniel limped through life, a ghost of the arrogant youth he once was. Martha sat on her stool bitter until the end. Sophie hid her ruined face. Ryan stumbled blind. Their house decayed, their voices faded. Villagers no longer even spoke of them. The cursed family, they whispered, shaking their heads. Forgotten. Once their names had been shackles on my soul. Now they were nothing but dust in the wind. One evening Adrian walked me home. The moon was bright, the night air cool. We stopped by the riverbank, the same reeds that had once been my prison. Elena, he said gently, I know what you've been through. I don't ask for your answer now, but one day when you're ready I hope you'll let me stand by you. Not above, not against, just beside. I looked at him, at the man who had offered me books instead of chains, laughter instead of scorn, companionship instead of control. For the first time in 2 lifetimes I realized I could choose. Not out of desperation, not out of fear. Out of freedom. I placed my hand in his, steady and sure. Beside me, I said. That's enough. The seasons turned. Harvest gave way to winter, winter to spring. With Adrian's quiet support I studied again, my mind sharper than before. I worked the fields, but I also began teaching children in the evenings, passing on the knowledge denied to me. I found joy in small things. The smell of fresh rice, the laughter of children, the feel of ink on my fingers. My days were mine again, filled not with servitude but with choice. And in those days love bloomed, not a fire that consumed but a steady flame that warmed. Sometimes I would walk past the Hayes house, crumbling and silent. I felt no triumph then, only a deep, calm certainty. In my first life they had stolen everything, my youth, my dignity, my life. In this one I had taken it all back. Rebirth had given me vengeance. But more than that, it had given me clarity. That dignity is worth more than fear, that love is worth more than chains, that life is worth living only when it is your own. On the morning of my wedding with Adrian I looked into the mirror. My hair was neatly braided, my dress plain but clean. My eyes, once dulled by grief, now shone clear. Behind me my mother adjusted my veil, her hands trembling with joy. You've suffered enough, my child, she whispered. Now live. I smiled. I will. And as I stepped out into the sunlight, Adrian waiting with steady eyes, I knew. The Hayes family was finished. My vengeance was complete. And my life, my true life, was finally beginning. The end.